After worship one Sunday morning, a young woman shook my hand and said, "Well, I quit my job last week." Surprised, I asked, "Why?" She said, "I've been listening to your sermons." Now I wasn't just surprised, I was scared. Could preaching God's word make that kind of difference? Leading a bright, gifted, successful woman to leave her six-figure income and her prestigious position at a major advertising agency? Actually, she said, I was being asked to develop a campaign to get 4th through 6th grade kids hooked on caffeinated sodas. I just didn't think that's what God wanted me to do with my life. What does God really want us to do with our lives? How are we called to live? What is our vocation? The Bible is quick to speak of the concept of work. Genesis begins with God at work creating the whole world. Then humans are brought forth as participants in God's labors, placed in the garden to till it and keep it. You see, work is a gift given before the fall, part of that whole creation which God calls good. You see, without work, without participating in some form of tilling and keeping, we aren't fully human. It reminds me of a conversation I had with an estate lawyer. One of his clients, a man who truly saw work as a gift, asked his lawyer to prepare his will, distributing his vast resources to the church, to charities, and to his children. But a core value for this man was his desire to leave his kids only enough so they would still need to work. He saw work as a gift, a privilege. So he left them some money for a trust fund for their grandkids' college tuition, some money for a down payment on a house, but not enough to live on without working themselves. Work is good. It's part of being human, and the purpose of work is to use our gifts to serve others. Still today, I want to speak about something bigger than just our jobs. I want to talk about vocation. And clearly, the church's understanding of vocation isn't just a job, an occupation. One's calling or one's vocation includes one's occupation, but it also includes other things, other roles and responsibilities, which means it's perfectly possible for children or the unemployed or retired persons to have a calling. God calls us wherever we are, including our occupations, but not only there. And for many people, their deepest sense of vocation may not be what they do for a living. They may work at a parking garage, but sense God's deepest calling in their work, tutoring kids at an inner city school. They may spend days at their work at the factory, but sense a deeper calling in providing a faithful home for their children. Discerning one's vocation includes one's work, but also other areas of our lives. In my case, I have a calling as a college president, a wife, a mother, a daughter, a church member, a friend, a citizen, to name just a few. And it seems each day brings questions of discernment, questions of focus. Do I go to my daughter's volleyball match or attend the alumni board meeting for my school? Do I take a Sabbath day or prepare more for tomorrow's staff retreat? All our vocational discernment is part of our Christian discipleship. For our vocational decisions are a reflection of our primary vocation, our primary calling as Jesus' disciples. How we spend our time at work, in our homes, in the political arena, all these vocational choices are deeply integral to faithful discipleship. Perhaps Frederick Buechner's poetic description of vocation says it best. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The kind of work God usually calls you to is the kind of work that A, you need most to do, and that B, the world most needs to have done. If you really get a kick out of your work, you've probably met requirement A. But if your work is writing deodorant commercials, chances are you've missed requirement B. That's what Buechner says. And though it's hard to beat his eloquence, I'm also rather fond of another definition for vocation, written by some of my colleagues at another Lutheran school. They write, vocation is a sense of responsibility encompassing multiple areas of one's life, work, family, citizenship, etc., so that the person lives in such a way as to benefit the community. It's a sense of responsibility, living with a sense of responsibility that encompasses all areas of life and benefits the community. Oh, it's not as poetic as Buechner, but it has a bit more room in it. Further, it's pretty biblical. For if our core calling is to love God and our neighbor, then we're called to use the multiple areas of our lives for the glory of God and for the common good. We have a responsibility to live in ways which benefit the entire community. In my own tradition, Martin Luther always seemed to be pushing Christians back into the community. If your town needs a mayor, he said, become a mayor. If it needs a school, help build a school. What action will benefit the community? And how can I help my neighbor? Vocation, yes, is a sense of responsibility in all areas of our lives so that we live to benefit others. So how does a person discern these things? Unfortunately, there isn't a blueprint, a roadmap, some sort of Robert's Rules of Order for vocational discernment. Yet I would suggest that fundamentally, discernment about vocation comes in the context of relationships, deep, lifelong relationships. First and foremost, our relationship with God, formed by weekly worship, prayer, and meditation, and immersion in God's Word. Our relationship with the Christian community, with all its mentors and models and prayer partners. And our relationship with the world, especially the poor, the vulnerable, and the oppressed. Yes, I love the word vocation, from the Latin to call. It's a rich way to speak of the life of discipleship lived in every area of one's life. But there's something even more wonderful about this word vocation. It never stands alone. There's an implied subject. The word vocation or calling implies that there is someone who calls us, someone with a capital S. To speak of vocation is always to speak of God, the caller, the one who stands behind it all. Anyone can have a job. Believers have vocations. And to speak of God, the caller, is to speak first of grace and love and mercy. We make all our vocational decisions in that context, held in the arms of our gracious God. Oh, dear friends, the struggle to live faithfully in all of our vocations, this is not something we'll always do well or get right. Still, we're called by God, a God full of grace and truth, a God who holds us in love no matter what. I close today with the words of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, one of the most courageous witnesses to vocation in our time. In excerpts from a poem he wrote from prison, I quote his words, "Who am I? They often tell me I step out of my cell composed, contented, and sure like a lord from his manor. Who am I? They often tell me I speak with my jailers frankly, familiar, and firm as though I was in command. Who am I? They also tell me I bear the days of hardship unconcerned, amused, and proud, like one who usually wins. Am I really what others tell me? Or am I only what I myself know of me? Troubled, homesick, ill, like a bird in a cage grasping for breath. Who am I? This or the other? Am I then this today and the other tomorrow? Who am I? Lonely questions mock me. Who I really am, you know me. I am thine, O God. It is good to speak of vocation. Even more, it is good to speak of the God who calls and to begin and end each day secure in our first and fundamental calling, a beloved child of God. Who are you? God knows. You are called beloved, a child of the living God.